Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Cowboys Takeover. I'm your host, Jason Kent. Man, what a week. Much different than last week. This broadcast last week, we were, as much positivity as I could bring. You're still defeated when you lost to the Eagles, but you have a cure, right? You do get a cure. And so far, the Cowboys' cure this season has been the New York Giants. We opened the season with them 40-0. Week 10, 49-14. A little bit closer of a game, but anybody watched that game knew, the fourth quarter they scored some points. That was not indicative of how close that game was. It was from, drive number 2 until the end, domination. So let's bring in my esteemed co-host, Mr. Aaron James. Aaron, how are you today on this Victory Monday?
I'm doing good, man. I'm trying to pace my excitement. Like you said, we're coming back from a big time low, and for that reason, I'm trying to steady my expectations. But with that being said, it is hard to. The NFL is a difficult game, and even though we anticipated this kind of dominance, you can't discount the fact that we actually went out there and we took care of business. You have to respect it, and so again, just happy. And actually, I was thinking this is one of the closer games we came to predicting the actual final score. I'm not sure if you noticed that.
No, I did. I was shocked when I didn't think DeVito. I didn't know how bad he was. Yeah, they were this week. I'll tell you that, Mr. Christy Francisco. They were that America's team this week. Saquon, I felt like they bottled him up most of the game. Even though he averaged 5.1 yards a carry, I felt like, when the starters were in, he got nothing going. And DeVito, bless his heart, he's a Jersey kid, getting to play for the Giants, North Jersey kid. It's a rough game, go against that vaunted Dallas defense. He just looked just not ready to be in that spotlight. But let's kind of dive into it. There are things, we're changing up a little this week. To me, I think we start with, and there's going to be a lot of this. So let's actually start with the negativity side, I think. What went wrong with this week. To me, I text you right away that first drive. To me, that's a big thing. I still don't like the chasing of the points. I'm so tired of it. In the beginning of that game, I got a little paranoid and a little freaked out. You're on the 1 yard line. Get the points. I get it. You don't want to give a team like the Giants confidence. I didn't know how bad Tommy DeVito would look. Or the Giants offense for that matter, after that. But I thought, man, that was a crucial decision because to me, it's early in the game. You really looked very good driving the field. And you get stopped on the 1 yard line. You do give the Giants momentum. Hindsight being 2020, didn't matter. But I think that's something I'm really worried about. And I think I've been kind of harping on all season is the chasing of the points. Because in a lot of games, it while against the Eagles, it did help some. There's a lot of those games where we saw it last year. You chase points, you lose. Am I reading too much into this? Am I making a bigger deal? Or do you have that kind of same worry, looking down the road, this McCarthy, going for it all the time instead of taking the points may hurt us down the road?
Well, first and foremost, I'm with you on this point, especially in the first half. I don't like the calls, the aggressive fourth down calls when you're in field goal range, and so, if you look at what happened last week, Philly did the same thing. So we had to keep up with their aggressiveness. I get it, and we're trying to go and win a game in a hostile environment. This is almost like the polar opposite, where you're going to dominate on both ends of the ball. And so points is not going to, you're not really concerned about, total points or allowing or having a close game. So I like to think that McCarthy's approach is, hey, look, it's just another play to run in the red zone. We need to figure some things out for when we get in crunch time. I can see that, but come playoff time, you can't be messing around and taking these kinds of risks and taking points off the board. You just can't do that. So I'm handling it now. I mean, I'm fine with it now, but come playoff time, it has to change.
Yeah, I agree. It's not something. I miss Jason's piano. Jason does have a nice piano. I just don't like it. Because my thought early in that game, when you look now, 49-17 didn't matter. You gave Giants momentum. If I don't know if, like you said, this isn't a game where I was really worried about losing. My biggest fear there was, we saw the first game, the offense wasn't that great with Dak. If they can shut Dak down, points there early in that game, if Giants somehow keep it close, it's a division game. That's where I got worried. To me, that's the big thing. You take the points when you can, especially in games like this. Because more than likely you're going to blow them out. But if it's a close game, especially, the Giants, you don't know what DeVito is. Saquon's still Saquon. But you're right. I really hope if something changes later, that aggressiveness bother. Especially, I get if you're like in between. You're in that punt, field goal. You're not sure. You're too close, too far. I understand a 4th and 1 there, maybe going for it. But when you already have points on the board now, let's not take points off the board. Let's make sure we get those points. If you miss the field goal, that's different. You can't. There's nothing we can do with that. But you got to at least attempt and take the points there.
I think it's also worth noting that in that situation, Dak, he checked the play, right? He called for kill, called for the run. And I'm like, bro, I want the ball in your hands in that situation. Either you're scrambling and you're getting it in, or you're making the right decision. It's because if you're the quarterback in that situation, if you don't like a matchup, you change someone's routes.
We could definitely 100% do that. And it was weird. They did have only 5 linemen. And even the broadcasters, you heard Olsen mention it quite a few times. They did have 6 guys in the box. So when you have, 6 guys and 5 linemen, somebody's getting free. To me, watching Dak, or that's where I was worried. Early in that game, as soon as he said it, they checked to the run. Olsen, you hear Olsen kind of break everything down from the football perspective. It's like, that's a weird check. Mm-hmm. Like when you're missing a guy, but I don't want to sit here too much on it. I think we've, this is a game we blew them out. There's only two minor things that concern me. One I think is pretty major. On the offensive side, I'm looking at this long-term as well. Pollard, man. Mm-hmm. He only averaged 3.7 yards a carry on 15 carries. He never really felt like he could get going. Is it time to start worrying a little bit with him, you think?
Well, I think we understand by now that, he's not a true number 1 RB, and it pains me to say. He's a guy that's going to come in and, give you some awesome reps as an RB2. A good time, a good, solid 12 to 15 carries. Don't get me wrong. But I just don't see the same burst and cuts as I did last year. The acceleration doesn't look the same to me.
We think maybe not 100%. Or do you think they wouldn't have him in there if he's not full good to go? Because you're right. He doesn't look right. And there are times where you have, I know maybe not showing today, but Vaughn, I think, he's had moments where he's super explosive. Rico had some moments yesterday where he looks really explosive. I feel like both of them over the last, throughout the season have really shown that. And really outside of that game against Arizona, and I think even that one more, he had 25 carries. I think that was the game he had his most carries this season for Pollard. But that was his best looking game. And against everyone else, he just has looked very, very average. And it's just something where I don't know. A lot of his games are under 4 yards a carry. I just don't know what it is. Maybe, he's expecting to, he's so used to having somebody from him in front of him where he's able to come in and when your defense is really worn out, that's where his explosion really played. It may, maybe he's not used to coming in and playing early in the game a little bit faster. Guys are a little more fresh. To me, I wonder if that has a lot to do with it. Maybe he isn't a guy, and then they have to really look into, I don't know if you want to start Rico, or I doubt you're going to start Deuce this early. Maybe looking and bringing somebody else in to be, a lead back and let him come in later in games.
I forgot a couple weeks ago that Leonard Fournette was still out there,
He
and
was.
he got picked up, and I'm like, that's the perfect body that would not, pass protector, grinder in the goal line. And if you look at what Kareem Hunt has been doing for the Browns in the red zone, oh, it'd be nice to have that. It'd be really nice to have
It
that. So,
would. And there's a lot of back. I feel like there's a few backs out there. I still wouldn't like, to me, even if Zeke did what he did last year, if you could get Pollard right behind that, I would be okay with still having Zeke there. Like, because I don't
Mhm.
think, to me, I don't imagine none of these other guys I felt like would come in and not dominate, but like look great. But if I could get Pollard of last year, to me, I would just like that. He's starting to worry me. So as much, I think, as we're starting to slide away from the offensive worries into, we're seeing Dak really starting to emerge now later in the season. The worry with Pollard, I think, is really starting to escalate too, as well. I think, to me, that's, I know we're talking about the Giants. He didn't look great against the Giants, but it really seems to be more of a long-term thing with him, which to me is a pretty big deal. Because I really thought against the Giants, everybody had a day against the Giants except Pollard. It felt like he's the
Mhm.
only guy that really couldn't do anything, and I'm worried about his progression and kind of where he's going. Especially, I think we're going to need him later in the season to look like he did last year if we want a shot still to win. They do need a little bit of a running game.
I agree. They do. So we're gonna have to see how it plays out. But I do like what you said. I wanted to just elaborate on that. That if we give Rico the quote unquote start, I think to replace Zeke, he gets the first drive, and then you bring in Pollard. And it's not to say that Pollard's no longer the starter. I think that's a ticky tack thing, right? There's just one guy that is making the first man miss, and right now it's Rico.
And he is a bigger body. He's 6 foot 215, so he's a little bit more of a bigger back. So I I think it's something they could look into, or they should.
Mhm.
I'm Mr. Joe Schmo nobody, but and me, like your coach, I feel like that would be a good place to start. Maybe get Pollard back more in that. At least he was only tagged for 1 year, but I do think kind of that could be a good start. If Rico's averaging 4.5 yards a carry this season, I think, in his opportunities, he's looked very explosive as well. He's looked really good, I think.
He definitely has. He's been a spark on the field, whether he's catching it from the back or running it. Um, his cuts are great. His leverage when he makes contact with defenders, like he's bouncing off guys. He's taking care of the football. I mean, both of them do take care of the football, but I think Pollard had one fumble like a
Yeah.
game or so ago. But I mean, at least we have that spark, and it's not all doom and gloom in that position. Because how disappointed would we be if we're at the end of the season and we're saying where could we have gotten
Yeah.
better at what position? We'd hate to talk about the RB position.
So I guess, and then those are my really two big issues with this week. Really, the play call, a little bit of the play call, that really that fourth down. And then,
Mhm.
I feel like Pollard is it, if when you looked at this game, I think Schoonmaker, I was going to mention, dropped an early open pass. We dropped, so the drops, a little bit of drops too. But outside of that, there's really not much went wrong this week. Anything that really, when you're watching the game, you kind of thought, man, that's something we do want to, discuss or kind of hit, or you thought, man, that's something we need to talk about. like in the negativity side?
Yeah, so from a disappointment end of things when it comes to players, I thought Parsons was going to walk away with like 3 sacks
That's where we're going with our disappointments. Is
in
he
this
instead of
game.
one, he got 3.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
you. It
I
could be.
mean,
Hey, it could have been. He should have. He got.
I
See, he got. I think, and I think this is going to be the issue going forward. And we didn't account much for this. He's getting a lot more attention, no matter where he's getting moved. I do think his times of, I don't know if he'll hit the big numbers. I think it'll have to be one of those perfect seasons. But he is getting a lot more attention. But I do like that you're upset that he didn't get 3 instead. He got his 1 and not 3.
yeah, I mean, you would expect him to feast on a game like this, but we got plenty of other guys involved, which I'm happy with, and have some more comments on the pluses when it comes to things that went right.
Yeah, so I think that should really be our because not much went wrong. I think we tried to a little bit of things. I think that are big. I think the fourth down thing is a big thing, or the going for it on fourth down and giving up points is a big thing going forward. But after watching this game, I think a lot, just so much went right. And we'll definitely talk more about, I think the Dak and CD thing is a big thing. But that went super right. Your boy, you've been calling for a game like this from Cooks. So I think we do have to shout
Mhm.
out Cooks. He finally had himself a day with 9 catches, 173 yards. He felt like every time he just got it, it was a big play, just catching everything. You see that him starting to target him more as well. To me, that was the biggest thing is you finally are getting somebody else outside of just Ferguson and Lamb. So I think now it is starting to show and the faith building there. And even though Gallup only had 2 catches, they were both like 30, 35-yard catches. So it's nice to see him start making some big plays. So I think the big play is also, I get it's the Giants, but it's nice to see the connection because that, it's going to help for when we do play the Eagles again, the Dolphins, the Bills. It's going to help build that confidence in those guys who really haven't been shining. But, man, Cooks came through in a big way yesterday. I think that, to me, he was my biggest what went right.
Yeah, and the heartbreaking thing is that you just know that he has this type of game in him every single week. So that's like the disappointing factor. I feel like we're playing catch up now with getting him to 1,000 yards. Now I'm gonna harp on that this season because he's gotten 1,000 yards with guys like Tyrod Taylor and even other guys that might not even be in the league anymore. Outside of Breeze and Tom Brady. So it's going to be a big letdown for me, being a Dak believer, that if we can't get Cooks to that 1,000-yard mark. So he's going to have a couple more games like this. Probably very similar when it comes to next week. And then we'll see how it fares out Thanksgiving. But what I like about Cooks, you got him on a go route, you got him on a deep crossing route. I mean, it's just it I love what I saw, and I've been a big fan. Now with CD, he made history at
He
the end of
made
this
quite a
game.
few things, yeah, he did. There's 2 separate things when I was reading that he really kind of broke.
Yeah, so one of the ones was 3 games, 10 plus catches, and 150 yards. So we know about AJ Brown's kind of streak of 150, but he didn't have the
It was only
receptions.
and it was 125. I think it was 125 and yeah, just
Right.
125 yards. CD's, he has to one up everybody. That's what that guy does. He's now 3rd in the league in receiving as well after this game.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, so he was the first receiver since at least 1950 in a single game to have 10 catches, 10 plus, 150 plus yards, 1 receiving and 1 rushing touchdown. To me, that one shocked me a little bit, especially when there's a dude out in San Fran. who's really good, who
Yeah,
runs the ball
yeah.
a lot. So I'm shocked he didn't do it in special. I think he had like 1,900 yards one season receiving. Like he killed it. Maybe not. He definitely have that many receiving yards, but I really thought that dude would have done it. But yeah, that's a weird stat because you always see guys rushing. I'm shocked that hasn't happened since then, but he's really since that San Fran game where we had talked about, he had mentioned after the game he's coming out. Well, I want the ball more. He's really it seems like it's heard both by the head coach and your quarterback to
Hmm.
get that guy the ball. So it was a beautiful sight to watch those two dudes just cook yesterday. No pun intended.
Yeah, and then so staying on the positives, to your point, Rico Dowdle, he had 79 yards on 12 carries, average of 6.6 compared to Pollard's average of 3.7. So come on, I mean, they're working with the same offensive line. I mean that says something when Rico's getting that kind of production. So I hope it's something they look close at, because at the end of the day, I don't care about anyone's feelings. Uh, if you can't run the ball effectively, you can't, play action doesn't work as well, and other parts of your game are just not going to work. You're not going to be able to extend drives. So I mean, I want to
So
see
you really want to see
Rico.
Rico get more touches?
Yes, I want to see him get more touches. He's deserved it.
I agree with it 100%. I really think he's shown explosive ability. And when you look at Pollard, who hasn't done as much, especially when you see his yards per carry really dropping when he becomes that RB1. Um, there's nothing wrong with being, it's NFL, you have more of a two-back system now. So there's nothing wrong with not being that opening guy. You have Thunder and Lightning last year. Let's try to bring it back. If you got to split carries, because like they shown, you give them both 12 carries. They're getting about 25 rushes a game total. So split a few of Pollard's and give it to Rico. I'm 100% in agreement with you there. Looking through the stats, I do want to touch what went right. We're definitely going to talk about Deron Bland. The other one, I did have one more what went wrong. I feel bad for skipping back, but I
Mhm.
think the two Dak interceptions were Dak, and I didn't like
Mhm.
it because it was a blowout game. That to me is carelessness. That made me worried a little bit. I don't want to touch on it too much because we won. We did kind of a lot for negativity, but that bothered his two interceptions. But on the other note, with Bland getting another interception,
Mhm.
this kid, man, they really found a kid. They really found a guy in this Bland. As a guy last year who had a really good season going into this year, really think he's going to be that cornerback 3, that nickel back. Man, he's come through. What's he have? 5 interceptions on the season now. He's
Yes.
got, I think 3 defensive touchdowns. He is coming through in a big way and really making a case. For one of the top shutdown corners in the league. And this isn't like Diggs's year where he had 11 interceptions but gave up 1,000 receiving yards. Bland's looking really good. There now, yes, there's been times he's been beat, but he does look really good in coverage too. And he looks like he's sitting back. He reads the quarterback well, knows when to make his breaks and his jumps. There was last week, even against when Devonta Smith had a touchdown on him, I think it was Devonta Smith. He was
Yeah,
still in great position. It was just a great thrown ball.
it was a
So
great ball. Yeah.
it was a great. So Bland, not only is he getting the takeaways, man, he is playing great corner. So to me, this is another big for the defensive side where it's nice to see that defense get sacks. It's really nice to see the emergence of Bland, and I think week in and week out, there's been most of these podcasts, the post game, he's been mentioned just for how great he's played. So they've definitely found themselves a steal in the 5th round with this kid.
Yeah. Now to comment on your negative thing real quick. So Cooper Rush had a pick and Dak had a pick.
Okay, but
Yeah.
I
So
remember. So I
Dak only had
did
one, but
one,
I agree with you because the guy was just sitting in coverage, and it
and
wasn't
it's
like
no.
a man to man situation. So to me, I get a little bit more annoyed and disappointed when quarterbacks don't see guys in zone. opposed to one, 50-50 balls, or one guy breaks on a man-to-man situation, breaks for the ball aggressively. Those don't really bother me all that much. So yeah, that, I mean, disappointed, but he made up for it in so many ways. So you can't
Can't really
you
hate
can't
on him too
harp on it
much.
too much. So back to the positives. Mozzie Smith, 25 snaps. I saw him around the ball a lot, and he had one of the higher grades, so definitely his personal best game. I'm looking at on X from one of our friends, Brandon Laurie, who we've talked about potentially getting on the podcast at some point. But he posted that Mozzie was 10th among interior defensive linemen and against the pass, and ninth amongst interior linemen against the run
For the season?
for the game.
Okay.
For the weekly.
For the
grade.
for the weekly grades. That's
Yeah.
still, man, being a
That's pretty
rookie,
good.
I'm taking that. You get that
Yeah.
type of production from a first year guy. That's he because they mentioned him. He definitely was in there. I felt like, and I think he had a tackle for loss. I felt like there was a lot of big plays in the run game. I don't say big plays but there's the stops that we had. I felt like we were controlling them, and he was in there hitting the gaps, really helping that defense shut down one of your premier running backs again.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be, it's going to pad our stats, right? Our game differential, when scores or points per game, defensive yards passed allowed. But so take it for what it is. But they're a rival, or they're a professional team.
It is, yeah. They've won games this season. It's not like they do
They
have 2 wins.
they almost beat the Bills. They had the defense has been somewhat respectable in certain cases. It's really been their offense that's been
Yeah.
the laughing stock of the team, really.
But to me, I just think we could go on and on. I think what about went right to, yeah, in this game. It
Yeah.
was, but it's just, I think the bigger thing, and I think something I've been I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to think. I think the biggest thing is really like what has changed in this offense. And when I look at it, because you look at the last 4 weeks, I know against San Diego, Dak didn't have a massive game. I'm sorry, LA Chargers. But he had 272 yards with a touchdown. But when we watched that game, he looked fantastic. He just looked so good. And then he dominated the Rams, came out against the Eagles, even though it was a loss, looked amazing. 374, 3 touchdowns. And then this week, after last week, you're like, man, there's no way. He comes out with 404 and 4 touchdowns and to 4 different receivers. To me, I was looking through it because it's not like they're throwing the ball much more. I think he's only averaging 3 attempts a game more. But those numbers have went up tremendously. And when I look through it all, to me, the biggest thing is really, if you look at the attempts or not Dak's targets, with the amount he's targeting CD Lamb, I think that's what's changed. I think kind of he's getting a little bit more comfortable with the offense, but really, it's in the first, let me go through. I think it was the first 5 weeks of the season. So I'm sorry, the first 6 weeks of the season, he was only targeted more than 7 times once. And that was against the Jets. Okay, against the Jets. Mm-hmm. Since week 6, he's been targeted. Since in the last 4 weeks, he's been targeted more than 7. He's been targeted more than 7 times 3, and at least 7 times all 4 games. Before that, he was only targeted more than 7 once in his prior 5 games. So I think the emphasis, and I said it early on, the emphasis of him going to CeeDee Lamb makes a huge difference. And I think, to me, it really shows, and it's opened up the offense, I think, tremendously, and opened up your other receivers a lot, because we see guys like Ferguson really shining. You see, what Cooks did this last week. It's him targeting CD more, I think, helps everyone, because now, yes, teams are going to start to roll to him more and double cover him, but that's going to open things up more. Where before, you weren't, while you're still having the same amount of run attempts a game, you're not going to your star. You're not going to the guy that you got in that first round, when you had a $20 million wide receiver. So to me, I think when I look at everything, I think he's a little more comfortable in the offense, but I do think McCarthy is kind of going back, because no game prior to these last 4 games did he average over 7 yards an attempt, or I'm sorry, per pass, or per pass completion. So the highest before the last 4 weeks was 7.6 yards per attempt. The last 4 weeks, the lowest is 8.5. There's a correlation between him and CD and how he plays overall. To me, it has to be. That's the only thing when I look at everything. How much he's going to CD and really targeting him, it opens it up for the rest of his offensive weapons. Is there anything that you like? Is that what you're seeing, or do you think maybe he's just more comfortable?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, obviously, this is a Dak that I believed we can see that he's capable of. Um, to your point with CD, he has more than double the targets than any other wide receiver, and so he has 86 total. Ferguson's behind him with 50. Um, but you would think that, and I do think there will be games where we see defenses try to take them away. You can't really double team someone in zone. It's hard to do. It's gonna make for a lot of man-to-man coverage. And we've seen Ferguson has shown to me he can beat man-to-man coverage. And I believe Cooks can beat man-to-man coverage as well. And at certain points, Gallup can do it too.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to be prepared for when that time comes. But I would say, it still poses a challenge to guys like McCarthy and Schottenheimer to be creative and still have CD have these productive games. That's jet sweep that CD scored on. Was it
Beautiful play.
Schoonmaker? He was
The
running
tornado
one
guy,
way.
like
Yeah,
Olsen said, we'll just go the
yes,
tornado
the
man.
tornado sweeper, whatever he called it. Yeah, that's creative.
Very much
That's
so.
creativity, and I want to see more of that throughout the season. It's they say it's a copycat league. There's some when it comes to creativity. I mean, I don't think anybody does it better than Andy Reid.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think
and
almost everyone will.
and you see how they get Kelsey involved. They get a lot of other guys involved. They're fast guys. At some point, we're going to have to use CD as a decoy,
Yeah,
right? When those games come and he's double team. But I'll say it goes to Dak's confidence, him being comfortable in the system, his pre-reads, his preparation, week into week, and I the offensive line is really not even in my top 5. Like, I mean, I think the guys are doing a pretty good job, but also
he's getting
we'd
hit
be
a lot.
we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about his scrambling
I
ability, right? And
I
using
did
his legs.
want to. That was my neck. I was going to touch on that next. So yeah, go ahead. Like that's something I think is huge right now.
He's one of the best passers on the run, from as far as accuracy goes, making the right decisions. He's a big dude. He's not as like muscular as Jalen Hurts or as fast, but he is athletic. I like what Greg Olson said. You know, he's using the legs, and he has this confidence that we haven't seen since his injury.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think that this is he's finally feeling like him
Hmm.
old self? Because I know they always say, you're injured, you're a pro athlete, but because he looks different. I think that's the huge
Yeah.
thing. He looks like he's extending plays much more. He's making those runs. You saw it against the Eagles where he just went airborne
Hmm.
against Slay, and they just murdered him. So do you, because he does look different as well. He does look more comfortable moving around and rolling out and scrambling. Where last year you thought, take the chance. That
Yeah.
I think he could be. He's finally feeling like him old self at 100% again, because his that ability I think has been huge those last 4 weeks that he's really played his best ball.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about what's personally, Jason, what's an injury you've had that's just kind of held you back from being your feeling like yourself from an athletic standpoint?
Oh, them hamstrings, yeah. When you pull a hamstring, those things are terrible.
I once had a really severe, a high ankle sprain,
Ugh, yeah.
and even after like 6 months, 7 months, I couldn't do my cuts, and
We just
um,
nerve. That's what you're like. I'm just
yeah,
I'm not a super fat slob, but I'm a slight fat slob. When you pull a hamstring, there's not like I
mhm.
played beer league softball, okay? Rounding first base and wanting to kick it into that next gear like you're still 22, totally terrible. I couldn't imagine being a pro athlete getting chased down, by TJ Watt after
Mhm.
coming off a tourniquet, just tearing anything in my leg. I couldn't imagine having and the fear that you have to have, like it's something's got to be sitting there that it's going to go again. So that I
Yeah,
think is a great point. Just the fear to really push it to the next level that you're capable of or that you've done in the past. There's got to be a mental block in there. But it really
yeah.
feels like he's beating it.
And I don't know how you feel about this, but I would like for Dak to lose like 15 pounds. I think he's a little bit too bulky. I would exchange a little bit more quickness and elusiveness than the size that he is. I mean, he's a
He's a
big
big
boy.
boy.
Uh, what do you think about that? If you're the team's
Right now, I love the
nutritionist,
way he's playing. To me, this is my fit. Like right now,
okay,
these last 4 weeks, I think are prime Dak. Whatever he's doing, whatever he's figured out, this kind of reminds me of it was at 01, right? Or no, at 21. He
hmm,
had the first 4 games where he was really playing well and then got the injury. Is reminding me right now the decisiveness, and I know there are a couple intercept, but I think the decisiveness, just the ability, the fearlessness, the
hmm,
ability to escape the pocket and still have your eyes downfield. Just in the last 4 weeks, it's been day and night from the first 6 weeks or first 6 weeks of the season. Just even though we were winning games the first 5 weeks, we were winning games, but he didn't look right.
yeah,
Dak looks different, and it's a good different. It's potential, keeps it up MVP talk
hmm,
different.
hmm. And there were parts of yesterday's game where it just looked like backyard football.
Yeah.
Like that throw on his back leg, or he said in the press conference he was trying to throw it away. But CD came back and caught. So you see, it looks like he's having fun.
That was a great play. I
It
love
look,
how Olsen was trying to be like, yeah, he's playing so well. They saw that, and yeah, no, we're just trying to figure something out here, and it worked out well.
yeah. So he's having fun. He's playing loose. Um, and when you look at our schedule, it looks like he shouldn't have any difficulty doing continuing this streak. And then let's see how the Eagles game plan against us for that rematch, and then we kind of go from there.
Yeah, 'cause when you look at his stats right now, he's fourth in, tied for fourth in touchdown passes. He's seventh in passing yardage. His yards per attempt, his average now has gone up to 8.1. Oh, that was something we mentioned earlier in the season. Something I think his yards per attempt were under 7 yards an attempt, which I think was his lowest since his rookie year. And just over the last 4 games, now he's over 8.1 average and 268 a game. He's over 70% completion percentage. He's second in the league in that. So to me, all the worries. And when you look at attempts, he's only 16th in attempts. So he's top 10, top 7 passing, top 4 touchdowns, 17th in passing attempts. So when you look at him, to me, I think the biggest difference is Dak and the emergence of CD, him really targeting CD, and just him looking more comfortable. I think to me, this is the type of offense that scares teams. Because you say what you want. Yes, they lost to the Eagles, and Eagles fans can say whatever they want. It was a great game, and it was a Dak I don't think many Eagles fans thought they would see.
Right.
That's a scary Dak, the Dak we've seen the last 4 weeks.
And I've been telling Eagles fans, like, are you confident in a rematch? Are you confident if we have to play you guys, even if it's at the link again? Like, where is your confidence lie? Because Hurts didn't have a great game. I think he was just over 200 yards passing. AJ Brown didn't have his great game that he's capable of. Like, where you guys couldn't run it as good as you have been doing with other teams. So
that's the one worry I do have is we played that well against them and still lost. That's the only worry I have.
Self-inflicted.
Yeah, no,
of,
agree. But to me, the Dak that we're playing now, I don't think there's a game the rest of this season that I'm going to go into not confident in him. I think he's earned that. And to me, I think the biggest struggle we mentioned multiple times over this season so far is the identity. Safe to say they found it. It's Dak and CD, and then everyone else plays off of that. Is the big way to go. I love the emergence of Ferguson. And Cooks is looking. If Cooks can look like this, he's not going to look like that, but he's shown you what he could still do. He's had 1,000 yards everywhere he went. It was such a great week.
Mm-hmm.
I know we had to try to fit in some what went wrong, but so much went right. And this is a team, when they're clicking on all cylinders, I think they've shown what they can really do. And like you said, the next few weeks are soft. After that, it gets a little tough, but this is what we needed. We needed, I think, what we both predicted somewhere around 34 to 13.
40 to 13. I think I said 43, 13. You said 40.
Yeah. I figured it'd be a bad game, and it was. So there's not much I think you could take from it, but these are the games that we need Dak and CD to really build, build the confidence, and then Dak to build that chemistry in the game with those other guys. Because, like we said before, the shots that they took this week were different. They were in play. The receivers had a chance to go get the ball. I'm loving what I'm seeing from this offense and this defense right now. There's not much I would change. And whatever McCarthy's doing these last 4 weeks, he really has them going right. And I think it's put to bed. I think early in the season we did have talk. Could McCarthy be on the hot seat? Everybody talked about was Trey Lance gotten for that? No, nobody believed, but there was talk about maybe Dak not being the guy in the future. But I think Dak has put all of that to bed.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, that's big that Jason came around to make that kind of statement, because he's been very skeptical even after last season, especially after last season, I should say, all off season, very skeptical, but he's on the wagon now. And now we're going 100 miles an hour, so he can't jump off if he wanted to.
Now we all on that Dak train. And so we all on the Dak train now. He's riding us through, I guess, to the Vegas. Yeah. We're riding him to Vegas this year.
And I appreciate, your comment. And yeah, there are talks about him being in the MVP conversation, at least through this way of the season. But I think in order for him to win the MVP, we would have to win out, which I don't think it's not impossible, but I think that's what would have to be.
But if he looks good, I think the stretch that will determine it will be that, week. I can't do math in top of my head, but basically Eagles through the Lions. So Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. I think because I do over the next 3 weeks, I think he's going to look good against
Mhm.
the Commanders at the end of the last game of the year. I think he's going to look good. Those 4 games will determine it. If I do think, I bet you if you look at the numbers over the last 4 weeks, his MVP, his whatever you put the line has moved tremendously on his MVP
Mm.
talk over the last 4 weeks. And you're right. I would, for me to come out like I believe in Dak right now. He's brought me on board, and it's something I didn't think I'd see. And I know it's after a Giants game and they're terrible, but I'm just really impressed with what I've seen from Dak these last 4 weeks, because he was playing pretty much terrible competition at the beginning of the year and didn't look like this either. So I'm very confident going in to the Panthers this upcoming week. Very confident with that.
All right, man. Well, that sets us up for our upcoming pregame talk, or as we look to break down next week's matchup.
Yeah, so we'll be back with you guys like usual on Thursday to discuss the Carolina Panthers and what challenges they may bring. Which I don't know, if you guys are listening to us, you probably follow football. You'll probably already know it's not going to be a lot. But we'll break it down like we do every week, kind of dive into what Carolina does well, and what we'll need to do to really kind of shut them down. So you can hear that Thursday, typically 6:30, 7:30. We put it up early, and we put it up early when we're going to go live. So again, please give us, you can see that on Facebook and on YouTube. So if you go give us a like on Facebook or a follow on YouTube or subscribe, it's Cowboys Takeover Podcast on both. And then again, you can see us on Twitter and Instagram. Same there as well. Cowboys Takeover Podcast. For all you fellow podcast listeners, and if you don't watch on YouTube or Facebook, which if you are listeners, you can always watch on YouTube and Facebook every time we're live, or go back and watch previously recorded episodes. They're beautiful as well. And you'll notice I did shave, so I look much different this week. But nonetheless, go watch us so you can see my beautiful face. But if you do listen, you can find us anywhere your podcasts are available. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Sure, there are other ones that I don't know of, but they are posted. We typically post them the same night, if not super early, the next morning of the day we do our shows. So, they're up there. But the best way to view us, you want to see us live, just hear the show. It is on the YouTube and the Facebook. So go give us a subscribe, follow, like, get the alerts. And if you like listening, get the podcast. So for Mr. Aaron James, I'm Jason Kent. This is Cowboys Takeover Podcast. We are now 6-3 on the season. Halfway through. A little more halfway through. We got a little bit left. Let's keep this train rolling. Let's get Dak in that MVP conversation for real. Again, for Mr. Aaron James, I'm Jason Kent. We'll talk to you and see you guys later this week. Thank you and enjoy.